Over the past few weeks, the market's been going up quite a bit, and there's one stock that I've been reading up more into and that I want to be accumulating more of. And so in this video, I've shared a lot of the breakdowns that I've collected and the analysis that I've done, and I want to share some thoughts around three reasons why I am buying more BMNR this month and what my plan is going forward with that position. Let's jump right in. Okay, so first and foremost, this video is going to be members only to start with, and then I'm going to release it to the full subscriber base, make it public video. I did a full breakdown on BMNR. That is a members only video, and that is where we had Chris, Data Driven Investing, along with Roy, myself, and Tanner, explain a little bit about the bull case about BMNR. And ultimately, that video is so jam-packed with value that it got us to invest in BMNR in the first place. So this video, I want to expand on that and highlight three core reasons why I'm continuing to accumulate BMNR. As of this recording, BMNR is about 3.5% of my total aggregate portfolios combined. Granted, I did get out of some UNH very recently, as of this Friday, and so I'm going to have more capital available to either go in through cash secured puts or, quite frankly, straight up buy the shares and then write covered calls against them because the premiums are so good on BMNR. I also have long calls for November as well as for January of 2026 for BMNR. So those are doing very well. Those are up like 50%, I think, after this latest rally. And so we'll see where those close. But in a position like this, if it were a trade for me in the short term, I would limit it to about 4 or 5% of my portfolio at the maximum. UNH actually went a little bit over this. It went about 8%. But a lot of that was the capital appreciation, since after I got out with UNH, it was about 30% or 40% profit when you combine the premiums as well as the capital gains, as well as the options that I have on UNH, which, by the way, those are still open. I still have spreads on UNH. I just sold the shares and I'm not going to really write against it anymore. But anyways, let's jump into three reasons. The first and the foremost is that I am bullish on the Ethereum ecosystem overall. And one of the big reasons for this is regulatory. We have a lot of regulatory green lights on crypto in general. And now a lot of institutions are asking themselves, okay, what is the best way that we can get involved from a building perspective? And as a result, you're going to have increased demand in Ethereum. So there's a couple of posts that I want to throw up here. Let me start with this one by Chris Patel, who just recently invested in BMNR as well, saying the ultimate reason for me to be bullish on BMNR is alpha that will be generated from the change in regulatory support. This crypto-friendly administration helped many names. SoFi was one of them, of course, by allowing them to basically take part in crypto as well. And this is similar to what's going to happen with BMNR. Like the bull case on a macro level is similar here. The post continues. Bitcoin first proved that crypto could work as a way to send money without banks. Eventually, it shifted toward being more of a digital gold than a payment system. However, Ethereum, on the other hand, was built to handle transactions and smart contracts, but early activity was driven mostly by speculation in NFTs, which didn't hold long-term value. Now, with laws boosting confidence in stablecoins, Ethereum is becoming the main network for real payments, remittances, and decentralized finance. And he also touches on Robinhood and the whole idea of tokenization, which I know Vlad Tenev, the CEO, is pushing hard into, saying that Chris thinks that Ethereum could evolve into the backbone for digital dollars as well as traditional financial assets, and that the market is enormous. So obviously, if you buy that macro case, you're going to be bullish in BMNR because at the end of the day, you have this administration that's very crypto friendly, that's going to push forward that regulatory adoption perspective. And then you have this technology that is the best suited to handle that transaction volume. And when you pair those two things together and you have value that's created from the institutional level, then you get all this volume that comes in through institutions that have an increased demand for transaction volume. And if you have Robinhood that's tokenizing stocks, if you have the JP Morgans of the world and all of these big investment banks that are also moving over to the blockchain as well as governments, and the blockchain of choice is, of course, Ethereum, then a company like BMNR, which is an Ethereum treasury, is going to benefit greatly from that. So the first and foremost reason of why I'm buying more BMNR is, of course, this ecosystem benefit that is the bull case. Now, one of the questions that you might have is, well, why didn't you do this before? Ethereum was one of the most hated cryptocurrencies out there. In fact, Bitcoin ran, a lot of the altcoins ran, and Ethereum was a laggard from a sentiment perspective, if nothing else. I mean, the running joke with Ethereum was that it hadn't moved since 2021, and we only recently broke the highs of 2021. Well, the reason is two things. Number one is the regulatory piece that I talked on. So from a legal front and from a regulatory front, I think we have more green lights on crypto in general because the administration is very crypto friendly. And now you have all of these companies coming out saying they want to build in the blockchain. And now it just becomes a matter of which technology is best. Do they want to build on Ethereum? Do they want to build on Solana or some other blockchain out there? And so that's the first reason, is more of a macro lens. The second one was Ethereum really needed a big spokesperson. I mean, Bitcoin had Michael Saylor, and Michael Saylor was essentially the Bitcoin shill or the Bitcoin bull that was promoting Bitcoin, that was educating people on Bitcoin. You had a bunch of people. You had Saifedean Ammous, who wrote the Bitcoin Standard. And so I think a lot of people were very familiar with Bitcoin, but Ethereum, not so much. And so you needed a real spokesperson that was a vocal advocate of the Ethereum blockchain, that was articulate, that had connections, and that could really move it forward. And that is somebody like Tom Lee, because Tom Lee has been consistently correct in this bull market. He is one of the perma bulls on Wall Street, and we are now in a bull run. And as a result, Tom Lee is one of the biggest voices on CNBC and others, because every other bear has been proven wrong and Tom Lee has been proven correct. And as a result, that adds a lot of credibility and it adds a lot of trust in his name and his analysis and his expertise in general. And now that he is the spokesperson behind BMNR, this Ethereum treasury, he is now the Michael Saylor of Ethereum. And that is very bullish as well, because that is going to lead to not only more advertisement and education around Ethereum, but it's also going to lead to more networking and more capital flowing into Ethereum as a result of his connections. That, similar to how retail investors would listen to him around where the SPY is going, those institutions would listen to him around what's coming up next. And so he is going to serve as a maven for Ethereum as well. And so anyways, that first point is around the actual fundamental bull case surrounding Ethereum as this transaction layer, this network for real payment processing and decentralized finance, the blockchain of choice of the world, essentially. Now, the second piece here that I want to call out is this treasury model. So this treasury model, I think, was largely proven out by MicroStrategy. It is no longer something that is completely out there in the wild. And by and large, MicroStrategy has paved the path for this. It has received some validity. And so now when we look at BMNR for Ethereum, we're comparing it to MicroStrategy from a strategic lens to say, okay, well, if Ethereum is at similar levels and BMNR is acquiring more Ethereum per share, then that's bullish. So right now, bitmine, BMNR, is only 34% of the way to its Ethereum accumulation goal. The company is just buying up all the Ethereum that they can. Right now, they already control 1.7% of the entire Ethereum supply, with billions more in Ethereum to buy. They're on track to drive the largest coordinated accumulation of Ethereum in the history of the world. So you can see here the 1.7% supply of Ethereum that they have currently. And then there's this really interesting clip. So Tom Lee was on this podcast. He's been doing quite a bit over the past couple of weeks, just explaining the case around BMNR in general. And he explains why should somebody buy a treasury versus just straight up buying the Ethereum itself. So I want you to listen to this clip and hear his explanation around this.
Yes. So let's get right to the question from investors. So why would investors need to buy a bitmine stock instead of just buying Ethereum directly if it's so good?
Yes, that's a great question, because someone's going to say, well, if Ethereum can go up a lot, why don't I just buy Ethereum? And one of the differences is that a digital treasury like bitmine is actually growing how much Ethereum you have per share. So I'll give you an example. On July 8th, when we closed on that initial transaction for taking over bitmine or transforming it to a bitmine treasury, an Ethereum treasury, there was $4 of Ethereum per share held at bitmine. So imagine someone could say, I could buy $4 worth of Ethereum or buy one bitmine share. As of August 24th, BitMine held $40 of Ethereum per share. So it rose by 10 times. But if someone bought the Ethereum itself, or they bought the Ethereum ETF, they'd still only have $4 of Ethereum per share. So you can see that a treasury company is growing your Ethereum holdings per share. That's why MicroStrategy stock did better than Bitcoin. In August 2020, MicroStrategy stock was $13. Today it's $335. It's gone up by more than 25 times. The price of Bitcoin has gone from 10,000 to 110,000. So it's gone up by 11 times, but MicroStrategy stock's gone up by 25 times. And that's because MicroStrategy as a treasury company has grown your Bitcoin per share, and BitMine is growing your Ethereum held per share every week. It's growing by roughly 50 cents per day.
Okay, and that's the reason why we should buy Bitcoin instead of Ethereum if we want more profits.
That's right. And to give you a perspective, the stock was $4.50 when we announced the treasury strategy, and today the stock's $43. So it's gone up by 10 times. Ethereum has risen by 50% in that period of time. So BitMine has outperformed Ethereum.
So there's a few pieces here that he covers. And the first and foremost is obviously that this is just a leveraged bet on Ethereum. And quite frankly, if you want to summarize the entire second point, is this fact that if you buy a treasury company, you're buying a leveraged bet on the underlying asset. If you buy a MicroStrategy, you're buying leverage on Bitcoin, essentially. If you're buying BitMine, you're buying leverage on Ethereum. And as a result of that leverage, when one goes up, the other will go up much more. So when you look at it from that perspective, if you are bullish on the Ethereum ecosystem, yes, you could buy Ethereum, or you could buy something that's more leveraged. And that's the whole reason behind this. And there's also this post which calculates the NAV. So the actual assets that they have on hand versus what their valuation is, saying that at $41, 2.07 million ETH, at 3 million ETH NAV, $55, 4 million ETH, and so on and so forth, it goes up to $100. And all of this is purely based on additional ETH possession. As they buy more Ethereum on the underlying, that's what their stock price should correspond to. But it also assumes that Ethereum is still at $4,500 by December. And so there's two factors here, right? There's one factor, which is the accumulation of Ethereum. How much will the company actually buy out? And how quickly will they buy this out? Because they are a levered bet, and they were tracking the Ethereum per share of what one share of BMNR is worth of the underlying assets. So that's one side of it. Then the second side of it is how quickly does that underlying asset go up? Does it go up in the first place, or does it stay stable? Because if Ethereum goes down, then obviously it's not going to be bullish for BMNR. But if Ethereum also goes up, and they're also accumulating as much as possible, if not more, then that's obviously going to yield very bullish results because of that nature of it being a treasury company. Now, I also want to throw up this post here saying it's amazing how many people are telling me that BMNR has zero chance of reaching $1,000 this cycle. Granted, it's only like $50 right now. Do you realize that Ethereum is only 2x away from $10,000? In 2017, Bitcoin did roughly a 5x from this point into Christmas. So from September going into the year end. The same run for Ethereum would make it over $22,000 for one Ethereum. The last cycle was cut in half due to the Fed taking the economy into risk-off mode with ending quantitative easing and raising rates. We actually never had an ending alt cycle. I think Ethereum returns to glory this cycle. Now, I'm not as bullish as John here around BMNR essentially going that high, but I agree with the concept that if Ethereum were to go to 22,000, let's say, versus 5,000 where it is right now, if Ethereum even went to 10,000 versus the 5,000 is right now, BMNR would do more than a 2x, even though the underlying is doing a 2x. So to wrap up that point, it's simply a levered bet on the underlying asset, and I'm bullish on the underlying asset, therefore I should be extra bullish on the leverage. Now, the cold water that I'm going to throw onto that is that leverage cuts both ways, and you have to really be careful around what you're doing. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about my positioning and what I want to do with this position and how long I want to hold it. But at a high level, if Ethereum gets cut in half and it goes from 5,000 to 2,500, then obviously BMNR is going to get hurt disproportionately more because it is a levered bet. But I think Ethereum is going to go up higher for a couple of different reasons that I highlight in the third point, which is that the technical pattern is very, very bullish. So if we look here at the price action, the last time we had 5 green days with increasing volume, the price went from $31 to $62, literally doubled in price. This time, $42. And this user here is saying that the best guess for the next short-term peak is $70 to $90 this week. You also have a ton of actual charts from a technical pattern perspective that looks super bullish. Here you have Jesse saying that it should hit $60 soon and then be above $80 by the end of the month. And you can see the levels here that Jesse drew out. I think this is Fibonacci. And you have plenty of individuals that are supporting this from a volume shelf analysis. Yeah, the Fibonacci retracements. And I know for a lot of you, technical indicators might not be the best form. It might be astrology for men, all of that jokes. But at the end of the day, we have seasonality in crypto. And going into the year end, we have a bullish seasonality in stocks in general with the Santa Claus rally going out of the August and September tough months. And we also have a similar pattern happening with crypto. Bitcoin rallies, Ethereum rallies, and you're going to see this. And this is supported by these technical patterns, right? And you could say this technical patterns are a self-fulfilling prophecy because people know these things to happen and then they buy as a result of them happening, making the technical pattern actually manifest. The point is that historically crypto has rallied into the end of the year, and I am betting for that to happen again. Now, the second point here is the Tom Lee prediction. Tom Lee has predicted that Ethereum is going to have some very aggressive price targets into the end of the year, could go as high as double by Christmas. And now Tom Lee, you could argue bias there because essentially BMNR is, he's talking his book. But at the end of the day, he's also financially motivated and incentivized to move this along. And that includes going on CNBC and Bloomberg and doing all of these interviews, educating people on BMNR and on Ethereum and the bull case around there, but also pushing it with his institutional clients, pushing it with his contacts, and actually increasing the adoption rate for BMNR because he's financially motivated as a result of being the chairman, and we all are financially motivated as a result of being shareholders. Now, those are the three reasons. So the first one is I'm bullish on the underlying ecosystem. The second one is the treasury model providing leverage, and I think it's going to go up. And the third one is the technical indicator and the seasonality of it rising into the end of the year. These are all three reasons that are causing me to buy more BMNR as we speak, even though it's over 3% of my portfolio. Now, very quickly, because this video has gone over, I want to share with you how I'm going to play this position. And I would say that's the biggest unknown for me right now, because I do know that crypto is very seasonal. I don't know if this is a hold for me multi-years or if this is a trade similar to how UNH was. UNH, for example, I wrote cash secured puts in the mid 200s and I got paid to own it. I got assigned the shares. I was writing covered calls on the way out. I collected a dividend in doing so. I wrote spreads on it. It was basically a full trade for 1 to 2 months. I made 30 to 40% when you add up the premiums and the actual capital appreciation, and I was out. And by large amounts, I'm out of UNH. It's maybe like a 0.5% position for me, even though in the beginning of August, it was an 8% position for me. So made those gains and now I'm out. Is BMNR something similar or is it more of a long-term hold? Because if it's a trade, then I know for sure that I want to hold this until at least November, December, as that's when crypto is going to start to really rally. And I think this thing can go much higher as a result of being a leveraged play. So for sure, I want to hold this for November, December. However, the question marks start after that point. And the two thoughts are, number one, it's seasonal, and you could get into this bear cycle or a crypto winter, essentially, where Ethereum doesn't move or stagnates or even falls. And number two, you could say, well, similar with AI, you're going to have a massive macro tailwind, and Ethereum is going to receive broad adoption. That's going to break that cyclicality and that seasonal nature of it. As a result, you should be buying and holding for the long term. Now, I own underlying Ethereum, and so I don't know how much longer I want to be holding a leveraged bet in BMNR. I do know that I want to be holding it at this point for the next 3 to 4 months. I don't know if I want to be holding it for the next 3 to 4 years, although that might be a huge mistake. So TBD on that second point, but at the very, very least, I know that I want to be holding it as a trade for all of the reasons that I listed out. Let me know what you think. If you own BMNR, if you're bullish on BMNR, and if I'm missing something in my analysis here. Thank you so much for watching. As I mentioned, this is going to be members only for the first little while, and then I'm opening it up. Please consider becoming a member to the channel if you aren't one already. And if you are, thank you so much for being a member, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.